You are dealing with the railroad.
So anyway, that's one of the things that's being considered, and when they get, if and when they get to that point, they want to be able to jump up there and be able to develop it without having to kind of keep redoing the phasing every time. So that, as you'll notice on the last page of the preliminary plan that you have, that phasing has been simplified. All of the improvements that were originally proposed are still being proposed. If you look kind of down in here, the improvements as far as the park improvements, the construction of this road, you know, the development of the Spanish Fork Parkway, all of those improvements are essentially done at the same number of units as they were originally, but now we just don't go through and say, you know, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You know, we don't specify exactly the way the phasing has to go as far as the order. Rather, it's tied to the number of units, and that way, you know, the improvements still come when they're scheduled to come, but it allows us a little flexibility to kind of adjust for 2 developers moving at the same time, and then also just to kind of adjust for the ability. You know, we're going to be starting in here. Flight companies is going to be starting on this any day. They're about ready to record that.
Let me interrupt you for just one moment. I want to ask Dave, I just want to, real fast, when he just said the number of units, you've reviewed those number of units and you're good with that process?
Correct.
Okay.
You know, but if and when that gets approved, the developer may say, I'd like to go ahead and just punch that across and make this connection and kind of really open the project up. So that's one of the things. The other thing that the changes do is the market studies have shown that they like to kind of have some neighborhoods. So maybe similar sized lots in different neighborhoods. So, you know, maybe, you know, a grouping of smaller lots, a little bit bigger lots, bigger still, as opposed to the previous plan had them kind of all mixed together. And so that's a change that, and again, I'll pass this little exhibit out and you'll see the 2 different colors of the old plan versus the new plan. Let's see, the other thing that's changed, we added this little pocket of open space. All of these parks were planned with the original approval. They were actually dedicated with the original approval as well. So the city already owns all of these parks as well as the right-of-way here. Park 9 we've added. If you can see, it's kind of a funny little wedge-shaped piece. So we kept putting lots there, but it was always kind of an awkward lot, you know, surrounded by lots. And so in working with the developers, we decided, you know, we just made that a park space that will also be dedicated to the city as well, and reconfigured the lots. So again, you know, density, it's actually a couple of lots less, I think, than the original approval. Parks, trails, Spanish Fork Parkway is all similar. The main street shift is this road was in like this, and then we had lots backing against the power corridor. And then Clyde Companies worked with the power company, and they've shifted this road so it's up against the power corridor. And I think as a general rule, the city, the staffs prefer that as well.
On that power corridor, will it be fenced off or will it be like a green, like a park type underneath it, or what is it?
There's kind of a long history behind that one too. Early on, way back, you know, when this project was originally being proposed, we were talking to the power company about trying to convert that into a park and a power corridor, and at the time they said, sure, you can do that, but you'll have to pay for it, and it costs basically the same as the adjacent ground. And so it really didn't become feasible. I can't obviously speak for the city. I think the hope is that, you know, currently a lot of this ground that's under the power corridor, even though it's owned by the power company, is being farmed by adjacent ground. And when that farming goes away and development comes, and then the power company all of a sudden has to maintain their corridor, I think
I just look for the
hoping that the power company will be thrilled and happy that maybe that property could be kind of pulled in and tied together with this park system, and you know, maybe have a trailer park.
I'll ask the staff in a minute, but I just want you to understand where I'm coming from is that, you know, it kind of comes into that's not my problem, that's your problem scenario. And these poor people that are building up and down the backside of this thing potentially going to have a weed patch in their backyard. Yeah. And that'd be concerning to me on this plat. So something I think that needs to be addressed, maybe from a development standpoint and from a staff standpoint or a city standpoint. Okay.
And that's one of the things that isn't part of the change that
But it's of your,
I believe it's obviously it's concerned. The project would more than likely just fence off backyards.
but it's of your opinion that the power company is not going to do anything. They're not willing to do anything. It's of your opinion.
Yeah, not since we've talked to them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Now, maybe engineering's had further conversations like
Okay.
Some matter of fact, Julie may have had some additional conversation. Well, it's up to him.
My name is Paul Washburn. I'm with Clyde Companies.
Hello, sir.
We've had a number of discussions with the power company, and I think they are getting more cooperative, probably not less. Currently, they don't have a plan for the maintenance of this, but they were very helpful in relocating the street adjacent to their corridor. One of the things they liked about it is they didn't have to go through people's backyards if they had to do any maintenance, and which makes me inclined to believe that at some point in time they may actually start doing some maintenance. But the other thing in removing this road and relocating it, we were able to actually increase all the lots in this area by about 500 square feet each. Same number. After we lost one lot, but all the lots became bigger. Much more functional building lots. Previous plan, the lots were along this street with this corridor with fairly large lots, but they had 60-foot frontage. And so you really didn't get the full use of the lot because it's kind of a long, kind of a bowling alley. We're able to straighten that out. But I think as was indicated before, as this property develops and the farmers aren't taken care of it, at some point our company's going to have to do something. And they really like to have the access to properties.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah.
So in a nutshell, that's kind of where we're at here. Again, zone change was more just a necessity. The city wanted us to go through the zone change process just because their new ordinance doesn't have the same provisions as the old ones did. And this project had the density that it did because of there was about 40 acres dedicated in parks and road. When it was approved. If you'd like, this just shows kind of the red in. The red lines are kind of the new plan. The black lines are the old. So you can kind of see that the roads other than the one we've talked about haven't moved. Just the lot lines have kind of shifted around. You got it electronically.
Brian, does this give us the phasing? I was wondering what the letters like B2, B1, what does that mean?
The only reason we had, as a matter of fact, we probably could have pulled off the B1, 2, and 3. We had originally when we were talking about some of these, we identified those because we were potentially going to have one of the next phases be right up in this area, and we wanted to be able to reference it that way. Ultimately, we ended up just in the language down here, just saying if the staff said, look, if we end up crossing the railroad and come up into these phases next, typically your ordinance reads you can do up to 50 units on a dead end street, but they had a good point. They said, that's well and good, but if there's a closing here for whatever reason on the railroad, we don't want to have these people stranded, and so they required that if this phase goes in, we need to do a ribbon road at least down to connect here, so there's 2 points of access. So that language got put into this table.
Okay.
So the answer to your question is really these are, we just said, look, if we come from the north, we'll probably do a B1, 2, 3 kind of in this area. If we come from the south, we'll do a C1, 2, 3. Like these will be the next phases down here. Clyde's, like I said, they're ready to record this one, and their next phase is about where that 2A is. The darker line doesn't show up on this drawing, but it's roughly like this.
Okay.
And then 3A would be their Clyde's next phase after that. So, again, don't want to speak for them, but from what I've heard, they're anxious to move forward with all 3 phases this year and next.
Okay. Thanks, Brian.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you. And Jared, I got a question for you. On the roads, the overall road plan, I'm sure you've approved and looked at. But as far as, do the roads meet your requirements per phase?
Yes.
Per phase, they're good? Okay. I was just afraid that if certain phases were done and a road wasn't there, that people would be trapped like he had mentioned, and so.
No, we pretty much detailed it out. If they start in the north, they'll have to put a ribbon road. It won't be a fully developed road, but it'll be a ribbon road from B1, B2 area down to Slant Road. And then there's other conditions when they meet so many phases, they'll have to improve RD4, which they have right here. And that's gonna be half road plus 10, fully developed on one side, half road plus 10 feet.
Huh.
So, the full curb gutter and trailer sidewalk on the east side. And that's this road, right?
Thank you. I do like your concept of kind of putting things in groups. I do kind of wonder if the look, though, between the size of these lots versus the size of those, and I guess when it comes to the design phase, I would hope there would be some considerations with that blends these two together, even though there's a much different
They
size.
won't face each other, will they? I mean, 'cause
No.
they're back to back, right?
No, I mean, this would be the front side, this would
Yeah.
be the rear, but I still think that the amount of how tight these are and how small these are compared to these, that there would be some designing that would allow those to blend together a little better. So, just kind of a,
Part of the reason there is that that's a very wide road, as you know. It
Mhm.
has a precast concrete fence that separates the road. So you'll have the road itself plus two walls that separate them.
oh,
And then
okay.
kind of that north wedge piece, as you can see, between where the city's master plan road required it to be and then where the power cord was, kind of left a fairly, tight little wedge that was a little bit difficult to work with. And so that, for obvious reasons, is why that's kind of one of the small lot areas. Because you're bounded by railroad, power line, and big road. So.
One of the things I look at this and help me, when I see this much density and congestion, basically, I'm hoping that there's driveways and that'll allow for parking, because I could just see this road here just being full. Most street parking, that type of stuff, so I hope that, again, on the design phase, that there's something that allows, is taken into consideration during the design phase that would prevent excessive street parking. Did I say that okay? Is that worded legally? My lawyer laughed me. So,
I could comment on a couple of those items.
okay, come on up.
My name is Jason Harris. I'm with Fieldstone Homes.
Okay.
We're, I guess, the group that is looking at developing the majority of this project alongside of W.W. Clyde. Just a couple of quick comments that hopefully can provide a little clarification there. On the lots themselves, even though those lots are smaller in width, they're actually quite large in size. So the average lot size on these is almost 7,500 square feet, which is not
Are
traditional.
you referring to these ones right here, sir?
Yeah. That's
Okay.
right. Which is not traditional. So they're quite deep. We intend to have full driveways on all of these. And even in some of the cases, even like on C1, which is a similar products type, we might even have some third-car garages on some of those.
So just to kind of challenge you a little bit on that last comment, yeah, I agree that they're deep, but isn't it kind of wasted space? Because you're not going to be able to access those backyards. The width of the home and the width of the lot is not going to allow you to have, to put RVs or to house or stuff in the backyard. Well, is the design going to allow that access to the backyard, or is it going to just be a deep backyard?
For RVs?
Well, just things to get things off the street. So it's 7,500 square feet, I get that. But my conversation is about too much street parking because of the density, the width of the lot.
Yeah, so that's taken into account with all your lot setbacks that are required in the subdivision. So we're not going right up to the property lines by any means.
Okay.
So, anyway, hope that helps a little bit.
Yeah. Thank you, sir. Anything else that the commission wants to discuss with the applicant, or before I open it up to the public for the zone portion of it? No?
We can ask questions of the staff later, right?
Yep. Okay, at this time, I would like, it is a proposed zone change, so I would like at this time to open for a public hearing. If there's anybody in the public that would like to come forward to address the commission. Hello, sir.
Hello, my name is Neil Larson.
Hello, Neil.
I live in Legacy Farms, and if we could go back to a map that I have, let's see, I live.
Prob-
Right there, yeah.
Probably right one of these.
I live, that one doesn't work either. Okay, right there,
Okay.
on the main street, which was going to be taken away. I have a couple of concerns. One is, there is very little crossing of the Spanish Fork Parkway. And I can see this entire area in here funneling down my street, which we were assured when we purchased the lot that it was all gonna go over Slant Road and down because it was a bigger road. There is no, on Slant Road right in here, you can see that, Slant Road goes up and then ends because there's a building lot there. And there's a different one, there's a high school, a grade school right here, which is technically in
Mapleton.
Mapleton's city limits. However, the school district doesn't abide by city zones. And excuse me, I've got Parkinson's disease, so I'm a little shaky. But I would just like to see some access up Slant Road right across here. And I would also like to see some access between the parkway right here. There's got a park in here, but if there's something that goes from this road right here to the parkway without having to go all the way around, so it would be an easy thing without, I can see this becoming a real bottleneck. I can see this whole subdivision right here with the power line grid. I can see them all funneling out my street.
So,
And so I would like to see an access right here. And I would also like to see, let's see. Excuse me, I'm lost.
You're fine, sir.
Okay, I'd like to see something across the gap here. And I would like to see something across the gap here. Because
Okay.
I am concerned about traffic on a residential street. And that, to me, that looks like it's a potential for a real headache. Especially when you get to junior high school, which is right in here. Once the junior high school goes in, I could see some real traffic congestion on this intersection right here if everybody funnels down my street.
Okay. Thank you so much, Neil. Appreciate it. Thank you. Anybody else in the public that would like to address the commission? I will after we close the meeting. Anybody else that would like to speak to the commission? Okay, at this time, I'll make a motion to close the public hearing. Need a second?
Second.
I have a second. So the public hearing is now closed. At this time, I will invite the applicant back up to address the traffic flow question that was addressed by our citizen.
So a couple things. The road patterns through this whole area, again, aside from that shift, which hasn't changed the traffic patterns, this actually slightly improved it from what we had before. Hasn't changed. This has always been the plan. Well, not closing, but having this in here that kind of disconnects Slant Road will actually decrease the traffic on Slant Road significantly. The traffic that comes from Mapleton will hit this road and and either head up here to your Spanish, Canyon Creek, or head down to Forest and go here. So it'll significantly decrease the traffic here. It's anticipated that people here will come straight to Slant Road and just come out here. We don't anticipate any huge increase in traffic here because of this. And so again, this helps as opposed to hinders. And again, I'm not sure what was expressed to Mr. Larson as far as changes, but this has been consistent since the project was approved. So
Yeah, but even though it's consistent and it was approved before, I get that, it's still a new request, right? So we have the ability to make changes.
I think I'm just trying to
Okay.
express that the closing of this helps.
Right.
It doesn't.
So we do have, from the Slant Road, we do have an access here, just to verify, an access here. And so all of these homes should exit through these two right here on the Slant Road. As far as the closure here, just to summarize, it's perceived as a positive thing because people coming from the east, from Mapleton, will come down and then turn onto this new road right here, correct?
We want to encourage them to use the road, the master plan road that's intended to carry more traffic.
Okay.
That's why we did this, and so that if somebody wanted to come through here, they have to kind of go out and around, as opposed to if it's too easy to go straight, they will go straight.
I do like this idea, though, of something right here, but I guess we do have one here and one here, though.
Yeah, and the spacing requirements on this road per your master plan requires them to be at certain spacings.
Right.
So we can't necessarily add a road here. We've got this one. The other problem is the power company won't let us cross any more times. We had some farm roads that crossed that, and so they were willing to trade them and move them, and that's what was done with the original approval. So we had this approved, this was approved, and that's really all we were able to do.
I'm just looking at people here that want to go to City Creek, so they're gonna have to exit here and then, or that way, if, once this is open, or they're gonna come through here and then have to cut through the neighborhood right here then. I don't see people coming all the way down, doing a U-turn.
No.
Well, they
no,
can't,
we
they're
would
going
expect
back.
them, if they're going north, they would get, quickly as they could, they'll get to that road, yeah.
So for these people here to go
City Creek,
to City Creek,
they gotta go
is
back.
that their outlet?
They gotta go back through the neighborhood.
Yeah, they'll work their way north.
I don't know if I like that. I guess they could go through here,
How can they go through there?
up right there, over and up.
Oh, right there. I think it is good input to have a citizen that's, living here and starting to see things.
No, absolutely.
You know,
No,
wait-
I wasn't trying to downplay
Yeah.
the concern at all. No,
It's good to hear those kinds of concerns, but that does look like, I don't know if there's some improvement that could be done, but all of these folks here are gonna be challenged to go this direction a little bit, aren't they?
Well, I think that's, the city wants them to go that direction. I mean,
Which, yeah, they are, but it's not very easy, is it, for
No.
these people?
Also construction traffic.
Jared, what do you think? Do you, now that this has been presented, do you see an issue with these people being able to go this direction?
I don't see
By
it being a
this,
big issue. These, C1 and C4 will just obviously just come right out to the road.
that's true.
This area will come down and probably come out this way or come out and go this way to City Creek. 400 North is going to be a well-traveled road. And
Mhm.
you can come down to 400 North and hit SR 51 and head over. So even this area, I mean, they'll just have to choose. I mean, they can come up through here and hit the Parkway,
Right.
or come down to the south and hit 400 North and still get to the same area on Major minor and major arterial roads.
Can we trade a lot here for there and make the intersection down here more, so this,
Brian's right, we don't,
I don't
this
think you
is,
want
this is a
We
major,
could.
for a minor arterial, this is a major collector road from Mapleton. We're doing that on purpose because if you do, the Slant Road becomes a local residential road after this. It's not gonna be a major collector.
right,
But from,
solve one problem and cause 10 others, huh?
This is a bigger problem.
Yes, I can see that.
This is actually not a lot of lots.
So you've kind of
This-
intentionally,
this
When
makes
you
this
look at
more of
road
a-
capacities, 80 lots that are kind of in this area are not significant.
okay.
Okay, thank you, sir. Any questions for, oh, go ahead.
I was gonna, is there any knowledge of what's going here? Is it just, okay.
Between you and Keith Williams.
Okay,
Keith, I think Keith plans to form that
okay.
Any questions for staff from the commission?
Go ahead, Tracy. I've got two questions, Dave. Can you clarify with an R19 zone designation, what's the minimum lot size?
9,000 square feet.
So it is 9,000 square feet. So what's the size of these lots in here? Do we know? That's what I thought, yeah. Seems like the applicant mentioned 7,500 square feet, so that's why I'm questioning whether we can approve a 7,500 square foot lot within a 9,000 square foot zone.
Great question. So we have a master plan development program. Like I said, it's different today than it was 4 or 5 years ago. But still today, we allow for.
As long as the average meets that 9,000.
That's a good way to put it.
Okay.
6,000. And that's how.
Okay. So Jared had to do the math then, is what you're saying.
There has been a little bit of pretty simple math. Yeah.
Streets, not lots.
Okay, and then the other question I had is, there was mention in the DRC meeting, I think it was by Dave Euler, about suggesting that the applicant meet the original conditions as closely as possible. No, but I don't see any discussion as to what those original conditions were. Do we need to know what those are? And, because the only condition that's recommended is that they meet the red line requirements from the engineering, so.
You can zoom in on that little bit of phasing.
I just want to know if we need to make sure that that's included in any motion that we make.
This might still be kind of hard to read, but here they are, essentially spelled out by way of when they need to be constructed, installed, anything like that. These really were by way of a phased plan for amenities and other improvements to be built in the project. Those were the original conditions.
Okay.
So,
And because they're on the preliminary plat, they're part of the approval? Is that how that works, or?
exactly, yeah.
Okay.
If you want to be more specific in any kind of motion, you guys want to make that certainly is fine. But I think this makes it very clear as to what is expected on both sides of the approval.
So nothing changed on the phasing requirements then?
The approach to how they're spelled out changed dramatically. So this is a very simplified version that provides the applicant with quite a bit more flexibility as to,
But
for
it's-
example, which end of the project they start
Yeah.
on.
But it's a lot based, how many lots are finished, whether they be here or there, then the requirement kicks in. Is
Well
that
said. Yep,
Based on units
exactly.
versus phase.
So, and the idea with that is that still at certain thresholds that are comparable to what was approved before, the same improvements or amenities are required. And certainly, any improvements that are needed for any of the individual phases are constructed with those phases.
To add what Dave's saying, the developer's required to pay $6,500 a lot to the city to hold until these improvements are made. So the developer can't hit a certain threshold and then just walk away and not have the money to put these amenities in.
Is that a bond that they're issued?
It's cash. It's not necessarily a bond, but it's money. It's real money.
Okay.
That's
Jared, can you go back to the overall zoning map? Yeah. One of the things that I think I like about the approach that the developer has taken is right now we've got an R3 development here. I think is there a change in grade between the development down, doesn't it? Okay. But the density is higher obviously through here. We've got R19. What's that zoning there?
R112?
R112. So it seems like a pretty natural transition from what's around it to where it's going to a higher, lot size to the R115. Obviously this exception, which I don't have a problem with, but I just wanted to make that comment, so.
Can we zoom in on the, on this area here? So I can tell you the only thing that my personal feelings are is I'm not a fan of this row of housing right here. Of the whole thing. If we can go back to the other one, that's better to see than this one. The one that has just the plot. I like it, I like what Bruce just said, that the natural transition, and it's good with everything around it. I'm just wondering if we can accomplish the same thing in this area by transitioning some of this maybe over here, or maybe in this area, and moving some of this size lot here. I just look at this road as being a major road, and it'd be nice to see some balance. I don't know if balance is the right word. That's the Brad word. So I'm not opposed to it. I'm not going to say that I would decline it because of that, or not recommend to city council because of that. But if this whole concept, I don't know why it is, but that row of density right there is just not appealing to the overall concept to me, personally. I mean, if we took 2 lots out, you could probably spread them out enough to make it a little bit more appealing. I mean, give everybody an extra 500 feet, but I'm not asking you to necessarily do less lots. I'm just wondering if we can relocate them to something that's on this major road that's a little bit more balanced and more appealing. But you're saying there is, I think, is it Brian? Brian, you're saying there was a wall right here?
There will be, yeah. It's part of that Spanish Fork Parkway.
So it's similar wall to what we see on 4th North right now, by the Sunny Ridge area?
Yeah, like on the south side, or
Right,
like a
so-
precast concrete wall.
Okay, so if there's a precast wall, I think that kind of eliminates some of my concern.
And I assume trees will go down in the park strip as well. So I think the combination of
I
things.
think they have spacing requirement.
Yeah, so if there's a wall there, then that takes my concerns away.
Per your standard.
Thank you. Well, if there's no more questions from the team, anybody like to make a motion? We need to make a motion to approve 2 separate motions. And I say not approve, recommend for approval to city council for the preliminary plat and the zone change. This is where the Jeopardy music plays. Do.
I'll make a motion that we recommend approval of and somehow my agenda's gone, so, recommend approval of the proposed preliminary plat for the Legacy Farms, with the, conditions as outlined, the original conditions as outlined on the preliminary plat document, as well as the condition of, meeting engineering's, red line requirements.
So before we make a second on that, just a formality or legal, don't we need to do the zone change first? Because the plat can't be approved if the zone change is
Do them together in one motion.
in one motion. Usually we separate them out, but one,
She's the
No.
boss, Brad, come on.
okay.
You haven't in the past. It's
But
kind
I
Okay.
think you're right. I think typically we do try to go zone first or together. one of the two.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
So if you'll do them
So
both
I'll,
then.
I'll amend that motion with the same conditions and all that stuff, but that we recommend approval of the zone change for Legacy Farms as well as the preliminary plat. We'll do those together.
I'll second it.
We have a motion, we have a second. Kim, do you feel, and Dave, do we need to specifically designate in that motion with the same provisions that were put before?
I did. I indicated that in the, Kim, you got that, right? Okay.
Good. And with that said, is there anybody that is opposed to the motion? Make the record note that there is nobody opposed to it. With that said, we will go into a discussion with the Article 15 proposed changes.
Still-
Title 15, excuse me, not Article 15. Thank you, folks.
See ya.
Yeah, let's go here. Tweak it just a little bit. So, we had a chance before the meeting to discuss this briefly. I apologize for this being kind of late in getting to you. We've scheduled a public hearing for tonight for this. We'd love to see this move forward fairly quickly, but if you want to take more time tonight and continue it, if there's anything you want to have us look at or study further, that certainly is no problem, but
Just to highlight, it's some wording differences between accessory apartments and the definition of garage, is that correct?
exactly, yep. One thing I'd add, we're really trying to be more specific about what's required in terms of for a garage, what constitutes, for example, a garage. So we've added the spatial component there to what a garage is. Incidentally, we don't currently define garage. This is entirely new to the code, or would be if it gets approved. As we started with this, defining what a garage is and where it should be required, that's how we ended up revising slightly the definition that we have of accessory apartments and some of the rules that pertain to that, simply because one thing kind of led to another.
Can you discuss how you came up with the 18-foot width? I know that some lots might be a little less wide, and if somebody wants a single-car garage versus a double, how did we decide on proposing an 18-foot?
Great question. That incidentally would be for a one-car garage. So we would consider if somebody had a garage of that size where there was 9 feet of width by 18 feet of unobstructed depth, that would be one parking space. Simply that's how wide we require parking spaces to be in surface parking lots is 9 by 18. So I know for a fact that if we went around and looked at some of the old single-car garages, the detached ones that you see in the older part of town, some of those might be closer to 8.5 or 8 feet wide, maybe 18
16.
feet or so. Yeah, exactly deep. But I think the things that you'd see built contemporarily today, they're going to be more at least the 9 feet wide with 18 feet of depth. So that's what we were shooting for. Obviously, if a garage, it's a 2-car garage, you're probably going to be closer to 20 feet wide. 18 to 20 feet deep, but we count that as 2 parking spaces for purposes of what we're trying to tabulate here. Like I think I mentioned in the email that I said, we're really not trying to change the rules as much as we are just clarify what it is that is required. Both us as staff and applicants that we work with, we appreciate that, having things clear, and that's really what we're trying to accomplish.
Thank you. I mean, I'm just looking at, I know people who have added garages to older homes.
Right.
And I'm not so sure that they would meet this requirement. So I'm wondering how many we are.
Well, let me be clear also.
Permitting from
there
doing
would be
that.
a difference between somebody adding space onto their home, adding some kind of structural space that they think is big enough to fit a car in. They'd be welcome to do that, and it could be 6 by 16. But if, for example, we're dealing with a townhome project where there is a requirement that somebody build a garage per unit, then this rule would come into play, if that makes sense. So we're just talking about a
Additions.
minimum standard that would define what somebody needs to provide to have a garage that qualifies as the required garage space. But if somebody just at their home wanted to build freestanding or otherwise some kind of an attached garage, these rules wouldn't come into play unless it's a required garage space, which likely would be the case.
So I think just to highlight, I think the thing that we're considering on the accessory apartments, the main thing that we're looking at removing is the word basement. And kind of a housing unit versus a dwelling, just so it's not always defined as a little harder for people to maybe skirt around the definition, I guess.
Trying to be clear, exactly. Yeah.
A little bit more definitive on what we were looking for.
So if I were to come in and if I design a house that has an accessory apartment as a part of that, I would be required to come in. I'm just trying to figure out, where do I fall within, am I a residential single family or multifamily at that point? Because it's in essence a duplex, right? I mean, that's where I'm trying to think of the actual implementation for the design professional that comes in to do it. And so that's what I'm trying to make sure I understand it.
We don't have a lot of criteria for accessory apartments. It's just the 6 provisions. We have their A through
Right.
F. There's a zoning component to that. So your property would have to be in the R16 or R3 zones, have to be at least 10,000 square feet. I think the other components are all related to the structure. The difference between an accessory apartment and a duplex, the key is that the owner of the property has to reside on the property with an accessory apartment. So from my perspective, the likelihood that use is going to somehow be adverse to the quality of life for the rest of the neighborhood is less, because you've got somebody that's somebody with vested interest in the property that is there. Whereas with a duplex, structures could be identical, incidentally. Really, a single-family home with an accessory apartment and a duplex, simply with a duplex, the owner does not need to reside.
So where does it show the owner occupancy requirement?
I just had that question myself when I was saying that. It's not part of the definition.
It's not part of the definition, nor is it part of the requirements for approval.
It's defined at the very beginning of Title 15
Is it?
in the general definitions. And you know where it's at.
What is defined, Kim?
What an accessory apartment is and what is multifamily.
It would be here. This would be it.
I guess the other question I have is, when is that required? Meaning, my mom comes and moves in with me. She's part of my family, but she lives in my basement, which she doesn't. I don't know that she ever would. And we've created I can't do it because I'm not in one of these zones either. But anyway, she has her own exit. Does that require? Does family relation matter? I guess is the question, because I think there's a general held belief that it doesn't matter if it is a grandma or mother-in-law or however.
Are you doing it for capital gain? Are you renting? Are you doing it for?
Well, that's what I'm saying.
That's another thing.
And does that
Yeah.
This is the city? Do we
Yeah.
care?
Who cares?
We take a little bit of a slightly different approach, at least to what I think a lot of other cities do when it comes to answering those questions. And I'll admit the lines get pretty fuzzy. So we have simply chosen to look at the structure. So, for example, if you wanted to create living space for a relative, maybe in your basement, let's just say, and you applied for a license to have some kitchen improvements installed, sink, power for fridge, range, different things like that, you know, maybe as well as to install a bathroom, maybe a laundry room, maybe you, as part of that building permit application, proposed to take out a door and just wall off a part of the home. That's when we start to say
So it's the self-contained component.
it's a separate unit at that point in time. So really, for us, we regulate that more by structural improvements, even than we do the use. So the flip side of that then, and this creates challenges, it really does. But yeah, this is how we approach it. Let's say that you have a basement and you have a refrigerator downstairs and you have a bathroom downstairs, but you just have, you know, some of the other kitchen things upstairs, like a range, maybe a dishwasher, different things like that, so that anybody that lived downstairs still would, you know, to live basically, would need to still have free reign throughout the entire home. If that's the case, we would still consider that to be a single-family home, even if, let's say, there are really two families living there, which happens throughout the city. So, gray, lots of times the devil ends up being in the detail. You know, is there a door? Is the door open? You know, is it one?
I think that idea of self-contained gives us, that's the most important component to me.
And sometimes it's the hardest to identify too.
Yeah,
It
sure.
really
I mean,
is. But
yeah, I
you're
mean,
right.
you can have a door that's shown on a plan that you don't know it's going to be locked because, but you know, in the end, it's going to be locked so that that second accessory apartment doesn't access the other unit.
So
But you
what
don't
we-
know that, and you know, you would never know that.
And even let me say this, and again, the scenario that you raised, let's say that you're in a zoning district, which most of the homes in cities are outside of zoning districts that allow for accessory apartments. Let's say you wanted basically to install an accessory apartment in your basement for an aging parent or something like that. And you applied for a permit to do all of the things that would make that possible. We still would issue a permit for that as a self-contained unit, with the understanding that it's for a family member, with the understanding then that it's still a single-family structure. We have an affidavit form that we make a property owner sign and to acknowledge that, you know, by installing these improvements and having a family member live here, that does not mean that this is an accessory apartment that therefore becomes a separate dwelling unit. You know, as part of this structure, it reiterates the fact that it's a single-family structure in a single-family zone, and the accessory apartments aren't permitted. And we've had dozens of people go through the process to sign those, and I'm sure that at some point in time, some of those units will get converted. We'll at least have a little bit of depth to our argument when we go and say, well, this just reiterates the idea that that's not allowed, so we need to change. But this is not a challenge that's unique in all the Spanish Fort dealing with accessory apartments.
Are we trying
It's
to
a challenge.
encourage or discourage them?
Encourage in the R16 and R3 zones. Completely discourage everywhere else. There's something not allowed.
We really don't have the ability. It's one of those things we've had on other issues. I don't care if it's the windmills or the chickens. I mean, we don't have the ability to manage it. It's, I mean, when you talk about how you're gonna enforce a door whether it's locked or unlocked, I just think that it's silly for us to, I mean, it's important, but let's just face it, we don't have the staffing to enforce it. How about the word apartment? I mean, based on, is there a, I mean, obviously we need dwelling, whatever, but accessory apartment, do we just change the title itself?
Yeah, it's almost a term of art though, I think.
Is it?
And maybe that's where, you know, like I just described, the typical definition, owner has to reside there. I need to go back through the code and see what we have that
see what
language
that's
in the code.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think really it is, it's a industry recognized phrase that means something specific.
Accessory
So I-
apartment is or dwelling?
Accessory apartment.
Okay.
Should that language be in this section?
I think it should be part of the definition, yeah.
So,
Unless we have it
do
someplace
we want to
else
move on
that-
this until you've had a chance to research that, or?
That's kind of my feeling, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a great reason probably to give us another month to look at that. And if you have any other concerns, you know, whether you can identify them tonight or if anything comes to mind in the next few weeks, let us know and we'll work to get it cleaned up before.
I like what you explained at the very beginning, that it wouldn't prevent people who have existing homes from adding on. I don't know if somehow you can define that, but, or maybe it's not necessary either. But the way I read it at first, that we were talking about all, you know, additional garages and versus,
Yeah, because it seems like if you were to say, I am here to do an addition of a garage, that you couldn't approve it unless it was 9 by 18 minimum size. To me, I think that's how I would read it.
Let me go to work on that as well, then bounce that off the city attorney, just see how he, I think what I'm hearing you say is that we don't want to make that size mandatory for everybody, just where a garage is required. Maybe.
or are we
Maybe
looking
I
at,
agree with what I
are we looking at new structure versus addition?
Yeah.
So this,
Well, every structure needs that as a minimum requirement, but if people have that as a minimum and want additional garage space, then what you're saying is then this criteria wouldn't apply.
You said what I'm thinking better than I did.
Say it again, because I was trying to read and I can't read and listen at the same time.
Well, this is a requirement that is mandatory for a garage space, and it has to be there. So if they already have met that requirement and they're looking at adding some more space, whether they call it garage or not, then since this is, the requirement is already met, then it would be okay to build something. They might park a car in that doesn't meet this exact requirement now.
So I guess I have a neighbor who has a carport on his home. If he was to enclose that to create a garage with 4 walls,
If he's
and if he-
already
and
met
if
the
he-
requirement,
Does he already
then
have
there's
a garage space?
no.
Carport's not gonna be 18 feet wide.
Well, he can park 2 cars there, and it's 18 feet deep. So,
Wide though.
So he
so maybe we need to change that part of it. 9 feet wide by 18 feet deep. Is that?
So I just have a quick
That's
question.
Yeah, I think that's worded wrong right there.
Yeah, that's-
Well, we can move on if it's a typo. I've been asking the question for 10 minutes. Okay,
that's embarrassing.
Okay, we got,
All right.
finally got to the.
So just like a parking space or parking lot.
I'm good with it.
But still,
then.
the idea. and
I was
to
just
your
sitting here
question,
like,
if somebody has a home
18
with
wide? That's a
carport now,
wide
they're
car.
not required to have a garage.
Right.
I got approved in an era when we didn't require garages.
But if they
somebody
were to-
applied for a permit
That
To,
tomorrow
to create a garage.
to create a garage, they
That's
have
the
all
criteria.
kinds of different options, as long as they had at least that much space
For each
for
stall.
one car. And then if they wanted, let's say a 12 by 18 garage, that'd be fine. If they wanted a 9 by 18 foot garage with a carport next to it, as long as they met our setbacks, that'd be fine.
I mean, I wasn't gonna call out a good friend of mine that sits pretty close to me, that have a 12x40 garage on his house, but.
I have a quick question about it though. So when I was reading this, and from what you said at the beginning, based on where this conversation is going, I'm more confused than I was. Isn't this in reference to the fact, like was said, it's where a garage is required. So if someone's building a duplex and and it's required by the city that they have a garage, it has to meet this standard. But if I wanted to add on to my home a garage, there's no requirement for me to do that. I can put on any size garage that meets the setbacks and the rules. This isn't referencing that.
I don't know that I'd even call that a garage. to be
Okay.
honest with you. You'd be
Because that's where
adding
that's where I think there's some
space onto your
confusion.
home, if that makes sense.
So I can add a garage and have it be 6x6 if I want to. I'm not
As long
going
as you've met a minimum requirement.
of the setback and all that kind of
And
stuff.
as long as you
Oh,
already,
yes.
as long as you're, and any existing home incidentally,
Okay.
has met the requirement.
Yeah,
So
meet
they're
the requirement.
grandfathered at this point. So with an existing structure, you can do whatever you want. Now the exception to that though might be, let's say somebody wants to convert their basement into an accessory apartment. And they only have a one-car garage. Well, you require a garage space for each unit. So then when they expand, however they want to do it, to add space for that second garage, that would have to be 9
And
by
that's what I
18
thought
feet
this
wide.
was talking about.
That's the idea,
Okay.
yes, that and the intent. And I can see why that would,
But you know, as soon as I submit a plan that says the word garage on it, the interpretation is gonna be, well, it's a garage, so it has to be that size. 6x6 wouldn't work,
I completely appreciate the concern.
so.
I do, I get it. And I think that's something.
So we want to table this until we've looked at this and reworded and changed a few things.
Yeah, having 9 by 18 feet, yeah, we need to clean that up. I really want to go back and look at the definition of accessory apartment and clarify that, and
Ownership or
talk over that
living
with
in the
city
home.
attorney.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the definition part we need to get, so.
Okay.
This has been helpful for me, I'm sorry that we helped make it confusing. I think that's great feedback. We did schedule a public hearing on this tonight, you can just continue that, you don't have to open it.
I just say we open and close it.
Seniors here to talk about that or not?
Am I late to talk about the Gatesburg North?
We just continued it, so it'll be back on the agenda next month.
Since it's already the Title 15, I can open and close it today. I don't have to continue the public hearing part of it. Do I?
Correct.
So just make the meeting easier next week. I mean, we've already publicized it, we've already opened it, so.
That does make it easier for us.
Let's just make note that there is nobody here, so I'll go ahead and just make a motion to open for the Title 15 amendment. Make a note that there was nobody present to address the commission. And then I will make a motion to close the Title 15 amendment. And do I have a second on that closure?
Second.
And we have a second. So I will make a motion to continue the Title 15 amendment with some clarifying words and definitions based on a good discussion from the commission and the staff. And if I can get a second to continue that.
I'll second it.
I do have a second. Anybody opposed to the continuation of Title 15 amendment? Okay, so that is the end of our scheduled agenda. I do know that Mr. Anderson at this time would like to take a couple minutes just to discuss real fast, 2 minutes maybe. The
Just made her night, by the way.
Did you? Good. So, yeah, if we just take a couple minutes. I know that there was an email that was sent out with questions on mixed use. Again, I think we can just discuss kind of the wording that you had wanted to use, and then we can maybe even adjourn that or continue that for another night as well.
Great. I'm excited about mixed use, so I want to talk about that for a few minutes. Maybe I'll be more or less excited after we talk a little bit, but before I even get into that, potentially your next couple of agendas might be pretty So before we leave, I want to talk about the prospect of maybe having a work meeting, might be even relatively short and sweet here sometime next month, to talk about some general plans, some of the kind of long-range planning priorities that you guys have, because you might have a lot of development things on your agenda for your regular meetings. But, and incidentally, anytime you guys have any questions about projects that are in the pipeline, feel free to ask us anytime. You don't have to wait until we send out staff reports. We're going to try to do a better job of giving you access to at least some basic information about projects before they get put on your agendas. Kim does a really good job now just preparing a one-page summary that has some information about projects that we can make available to you sometimes months before projects get to your agendas, and we'll start getting that out a little bit sooner. So
We have May's already as a draft, some things that we know will be on the May agenda. So if you want to view that on the board docs.
a little bit of a side note there. So this is what we've talked about is the work program. Got some things in gray at the bottom. We'll spend a lot of time on these tonight, but partly because of the discussion that we had on the Devaney annexation, I'd like to talk about the different industrial zones that we have and maybe some ways to address some of the concerns that we heard in your meeting. We heard some of them in the city council meeting as well, just about what does light industrial mean, what is allowed in the I-1 zone. Do we need to maybe make that a zone that is a little bit more restrictive than it is today? I don't think this needs to be a lengthy discussion that we need to draw out over weeks and weeks and weeks, but I'd like to just go through the different uses that we have spelled out in the different zones. That is the 3 different industrial zones that we have, and see if it makes sense to make any changes there. That I could see might lead to making some changes on the map. For example, in my opinion, Sapa, it's zoned light industrial. I think it's zoned light industrial just because historically it's been zoned light industrial, but that's a great example of something that's not light industry. That's a heavy use. We don't want to make them non-conforming for a number of different reasons. So you might want to look at a zone change for something like Sapa. Might say the same for PDM Steel and some other companies that we have in town. And I think if we went in that direction, that might make it easier for us to be more restrictive with what we would permit in the I-1 zone. Just a thought. This is a big one for me. Kim can support this. We get inquiries several times a week, typically, from people that are looking for property that they can build high-density residential units on. We get enough inquiries. People are beating the bush throughout the community aggressively, such that I just want to make sure that consciously we're deciding in advance what our position is on high-density residential uses.
I'd like to table that discussion until we get what we requested from the inventory of their city.
That's a great thought.
So once we get that, I think that will lead to this discussion.
And part of that, I think we need to get a definition of high density because it's different for everybody.
Right.
So
What people are asking for is something closer to 20 units to the acre than 12 that we allow now. One thing I'm kind of anxious to do, Springville has approved a project. Its first phases are done, it's open, they're leasing.
north end of Main Street.
I'd love to take a tour of that too with you guys sometime. Frankly, I think if we ever did move forward with any kind of higher density zoning provisions to allow for apartment complexes and things like that, I think we want to make sure that the bar is set pretty high. And I think just looking at some projects around to see what maybe you do and don't like about it might be a good starting point for that. But I appreciate the idea of getting some more information put together by way of the inventory first. But that's something I'd like to get on your list here, just so that we have at least on the radar. Some changes to the infill overlay that quite possibly will be on your agenda next month. It might be on your agenda with a recommendation for denial from staff. We've been approached by a gentleman that wants to build a fourplex that right now our infill overlay program doesn't permit. I think he has a couple of valid points though that are worth considering. So the direction I've been given is to draft a proposed amendment to Title 15 that would accommodate his request, and we just take that through the system. And let you guys have a public hearing and deliberate on it. City Council do the same thing and just see what people think. Basically, it's a matter of allowing for higher density than what we currently allow as part of the overlay program that we have. Landscaping requirements, those will be on your agenda here likely in May. Just requiring some basic landscaping with any home that gets constructed. So back to the more important part. Mixed use. Brad, I appreciated what you mentioned. It's been a fairly busy week, so I haven't been able to focus on a lot of emails and things like I'd like, but this is the language that we have in our general plan right now that pertains to mixed use. So I gave you guys a copy of that and flagged this page. And you know, I wrote this with the help of several planning commissioners as kind of a co-author. I know what we meant when we wrote it, but I completely appreciate the fact that when somebody else picks it up 5 years later, or even myself, it gets interpreted differently. I think one thing that, and please tell me if I'm just misreading things, flat out wrong, but as we've talked about mixed use, I kind of get the feeling that we don't necessarily really mean mixed use. As we've talked about, for example, the idea of the project on Volunteer Drive, you know, is that really a mixed-use development, like the cohabitation of residential units and commercial units in the same building? In that regard, it certainly isn't. Which we felt when we wrote this was still appropriate in an area that on the general plan it calls for mixed use. I guess what I'm trying to get to is that I wonder, and the word transitional, that might not be the right word to use. But the idea with the mixed use designation that we have now on the map, which is...
I think the intent is to be flexible. Is that, would it be?
That was the intent, exactly, right, to allow for some different things with the understanding of it.
You know, the interesting thing is the word transitional versus the way it's written here, serve as a transition. See, to me, they're different definitions. Transitional means it could be something that's temporary.
It's a timing thing.
Right, a timing thing, whereas serving as a transition means more like a buffer.
Buffer blend.
Yeah, an edge.
I agree. I tried to cover that. With this
So
here.
that one on Volunteer Drive, what you said you don't think that's mixed use. What do you think it is? I mean, is that just high density, higher density?
I am afraid I'm not going to make any sense here at all. Okay, I'm going to try anyway.
We'll give you
The
funny
way we
faces.
defined mixed use, because in my mind, it was simply intended to be something really flexible, like Brad said. So per that definition, I think what's been proposed in Volunteer Drive is appropriate to consider. It fits within the mixed use designation.
Okay.
But in more of the using mixed use as, again, kind of a term of art, if you were to talk to somebody, let's say an architect, somebody that has some feeling for what you typically mean when you're talking about mixed use, they're generally going to say, well, it's
Multiple
different
uses in the same
uses
property.
in the same building or on the same property,
Yeah.
something like that.
Yeah.
So that's where I wonder if maybe I haven't kind of confused
There's a
things.
disconnect there.
Right.
Well,
and
and
if
it's
we're
not- it's-
maybe better off, maybe it's more along the lines of flexible that we want to say as part of the title versus mixed use. I don't know.
to me, that's two separate descriptions. From what you described, mixed use with stores in the bottom, apartments above, that's getting popular. It's got really a lot of momentum, and I think that is people's understanding of mixed use. So maybe that's the description of Spanish Fork's mixed use, where the one on Volunteer Drive really is just kind of a transition from homes to, you know, to change in density.
I think I agree. And so, for example, with that idea, I think there might be value in looking at this map and saying, okay, so where do we really mean mixed use?
Mm-hmm.
If that's what we want, what of these blue areas should stay mixed use? And with the other areas, we should look at something else. Maybe it is transitional. Maybe it's something entirely
I keep going back to the idea of urban village as kind of that
Yeah.
variety of uses that could happen in a
That would
particular
happen
location.
under not only on the same property, but under
I know
the
that's a
same
zoning designation, but
Up in Highland, when we did that tour with Jesse,
Yep.
that's mixed use to me.
Where they had the townhomes and the commercial
Townhome.
next door.
Commercial, you had businesses on the bottom and townhomes on the top, and next door was a grocery store across the street. And to me, it's, when I use the word mixed use, I almost think of a daybreak concept, where it's, you know, an area that is, if somebody was perhaps didn't have a vehicle, they could live there and get their basic needs. And I don't know, so maybe I'm way off, but that's kind of what I look at as a mixed use. It's more of not a building, it's an area that is all inclusive.
Which is how I've looked at it.
but
That kind of describes that area down by Costco right now with you've got those homes, and there's gonna be, to what you just said, somebody could live there and they could go bank, they could go get their groceries, they could.
Yeah.
They
And
could-
also, let me say this, and this was part of the discussion that we had, particularly about this area. We took a field trip one night, where we were stopping at dinner in Bajío before we started work on the last general plan revision. This was like 2008 or 2009. We were expecting Target and Home Depot to be under construction at any time then. So we knew then that there was going to be a lot of commercial development, and there was going to be pressure to change land uses at some point in time to the south. And we talked about the idea of there being some kind of transition from the intense commercial area down into single-family neighborhoods that we would guess are still going to be much like they are now in another 50 or 100 years. Probably not going to get a lot of change there. But I think we were talking not only about a transition in terms of going from one land use to the other, but also about the idea that that area is going to change incrementally over time. So I think there is that component of it as well that for me makes sense when we're looking at these areas that it's going to be redevelopment at this point. We don't have really, with the exception of this area out here and a couple of others, you know, most of the areas that we have that are designated mixed use right now, there's an existing land use there now. It's not vacant, so.
Is there anybody on the commission that doesn't view it this way? Regardless of what it says or what we think, is there anybody that does not look at that as the vision or the view of what mixed use could be or should be? I mean, if we all see the same view and vision, then we can.
I still think there's multiple, I see, as we went through this at our last meeting or 2 meetings ago, 3 different potential viewpoints of mixed use. Mixed use within a building is 1, mixed use within a piece of property is 2, and then the third one is a variety of possibilities could be here. So in other words, using the one down here in Volunteer Drive, we're looking at saying, okay, a residential use is appropriate here. In addition, an office use could be appropriate, or a retail use could be appropriate there. It doesn't have, it's the singularity of the use on a particular piece of property versus more than one use on a piece of property that I think could be viewed differently.
Yeah, that property has some frontage on Main Street, and so rather than take the apartments right up to Main Street, they're saying let's mix this up just put some commercial stuff out front, and then we'll put the apartments in the back. To me, I guess that can be mixed use for that property. Or the mixed use might be like what you're talking, well, let's put commercial on the ground floor and some apartments up above. And you see this moved right out close to the street, these buildings, and the setbacks are all right up.
It seems to me that we can accomplish all three of what you're saying in a definition, and then whether it's up, down, sideways, or whatever, that's more the design phase. The definition, I think we can accomplish all three of what you're saying. Is that fair?
To some
or-
extent, that is what I've tried to do here with some of the different policy components of this, with that very idea. But I wonder, in fact, what I'm really hearing is that it might make sense to look at this and bisect that or trisect it, and just come up with some different designations where we'd be looking for maybe one of those three things specifically.
Well, and I guess, I look at this one statement where it says, residential may be permitted, when integrated into developments that also contain non-residential uses, or at locations where the city has determined it's infeasible to operate non-residential uses. If the city has determined that, then why are we designating it mixed use? If we already say it should be just residential, then we shouldn't have it. There's no need to do that.
Yeah, the only answer I can give you there is I don't know necessarily that now our crystal ball is so clear.
Yeah,
we can
I understand
rule
that.
out the non-residential potential
I mean, the infeasibility becomes our responsibility to
at the
determine.
time of the zone change.
Yeah.
I think that's when that happens.
Yeah.
So I have a quick question. So if something's, I was just reading through the minutes from last time, the long discussion you guys had about industrial zoning. And if something's zoned industrial one or whatever, and somebody comes in and meets the requirements, then they can put it there. We really don't have any ability to say, no, you can't do that. But the mixed use, it seems to me that that's giving us a lot of say over what can and can't go there. Am I understanding that properly?
It's kind of apples and oranges.
Okay.
We have it set up, at least this could change stuff, but right now when we talk mixed use, we're talking about a general plan designation.
Okay, not zoning.
We don't really have a mixed use zone. We have zones that allow for a mixture of uses, but we don't have a zone, for example, that we call mixed use.
I mean, doesn't the general plan say, it kind of has that chart in there that says, in the mixed use general plan designation, these are the variety of zoning possibilities that could fit within that.
But it gives us a lot of play. It
Which
gives
is
us
back
a
to
lot of
what
decisions
Brad
that
said
we
with the
make.
flex. That's the intent.
Yeah.
Well,
On
it gives
the
the
general
developer a lot of
And
options too.
A lot of options to ask for, of course. He has to have the city council's
So
approval.
my only thought is this, is that, for example, the intentions for volunteer drive and what we saw today, the potential in a month or two that a developer's gonna come in and want to make a bunch of townhomes in there. I mean, we really, as a planning commission, have to make a decision. What do we want that to look like? Because it's now in our general plan mixed use, and is that meeting that requirement? And I don't know that you can go through and define detail on each one of these, because we basically would have to sit down and look at every single one of those areas and determine what we want it to look like. And wouldn't that be limiting developers from coming in and sharing new and novel ideas that we want to hear about?
Which for me and Bruce, that's kind of a daunting task. So I guess that's why, and it's not, that's entirely why we sort of punted when we did the general plan like this a few years ago. Let a developer propose an idea, and if we think it's the right fit, then zoning follows. If not, it doesn't.
But what if we don't think it's the right fit?
Then you have to say no. Which is, of course, that's not easy, and that's kind of leading me back to partly why I feel like this does need a change. So I think if we did even not going property to property, but we just studied those areas maybe in blocks, we'd probably start to identify ones where we don't really expect real mixed use, for example.
I mean, how much? Okay, so we obviously know that mixed use designation. There's no the underlying zoning is probably agricultural right now, right?
And that's in the county today.
and that's the county, so yeah. You know, this one here at Volunteer Drive, it's also agricultural. I don't know what the one off Del Monte is. You know, that's in the county there as well. I guess what I'm wondering is how much of this mixed use, general use designation doesn't already have a zoning designation that could change? Does that my question make sense?
I think it'd be all of the undeveloped property that has that designation.
But a lot of the highlighted area is not undeveloped.
Yeah, I mean, you know, all of this is
So
pretty well
yes.
developed.
So that could change, certainly.
I mean, you know, that's probably the one only piece in the city besides the one here at Volunteer
Which
Drive.
would be the next piece to develop.
I mean, up Center Street, you got homes that are residential, but some of them are mixed use, so it could become on Center Street a business. The way it's defined now, right?
Like we've had happen, you know, at Credit Union, for example, open past few years on Center Street, different things like that. And that's been part of the concept.
So what's our next step? I mean, what?
Working group.
If you want to have a separate, and I'd love to take some time to talk more about this, a couple of other things too. May's gonna be rough for me, we've got quite a bit going on, so one other thing we could talk about.
I have a proposal for the group. We haven't done, something in a while. We get together every once in a while, but what's our feelings about a working group early morning with maybe a little breakfast or orange juice or something, coffee for some at 7 o'clock in the morning before work? Could we get together for an hour and a half in the morning? I know some of us maybe cut away from work a half hour in the evenings in order to get here on time. Can we do a morning 7 a.m. session and maybe have a little breakfast?
You guys just say when?
Dave's got the longest commute. So.
There's Thursday the 23rd, 7 a.m. work. It's only 2 weeks away. Have a little work.
Right now it works well for me.
He wants to meet.
Thursdays are our best days. I was gonna suggest Wednesday the 22nd or Wednesday the 29th, so.
That works for me.
Thursday the 23rd.
Yep.
I'd like to propose a working at early morning and maybe have a little breakfast with it as well.
We'll have this room here set up. We'll just meet in here.
Okay.
Great, I appreciate that.
Let's do a little homework ahead of time and maybe look at some mixed-use definitions of other cities. We've already done this in the past. I think we need to I like to come to the meeting and get her done. I think we've talked about a concept. Let's start getting a definition built.
7 a.m.
7 a.m. on the 23rd.
I appreciate that a lot, thank you.
What kind of time frame is that inventory thing on? Is it even on the radar as far as how long that project's going to take?
The city manager asked our engineering department, me and our GIS guy, to get that done. Our GIS guy is kind of tied up for another week or so, and then this would be his next project, I think. Might take a little more overtime, even.
So
That's why.
30 days before, 30 to 60 days?
It would be close to 30, I guess, yeah, before we'd have anything looking.
He's got 2 interns now, so we can get it done.
We've talked about the downtown project that we're working on in May. At 5:05 tonight, I got a schedule that I think is good to share with you guys for different things that will happen that week.
Okay.
So I'll go upstairs to my office and I'll forward that email
Okay.
on to everybody. Schedule, I guess, still is a little bit subject to change if I read the email the right way. But, so May 11th, that's a Monday.
Let's do this.
There's going to be quite a few different activities I want you guys to hear as much as you can get here.
Dave, let's go ahead and do this. I'd like to propose that we close tonight's session so that some people are, and then let's continue those that are able to stay with the little working group now. Because I think nothing that we continue to talk about, I think needs to be on public forum or public hearing, and then we can let a few people go, and then those that want to stay and continue to address these, I propose that we close tonight's commission meeting, and then invite those to stay after for a little working group to discuss some of the things going forward. So Make a motion to do that if I have a second.
Second.
I have a second. Anybody opposed to closing tonight's meeting? Okay, so tonight is officially closed.